Hello, everyone, and welcome back to From the Stands. This is the college football game day show. You'll notice we only have two heads on the screen. I can't point to this side because Andy, well, he's moving into a new home. So he is busy this week. I've got Mr. Tom Scavetta here to my right, though. As always, we will chop it up because there's a lot of action here on our Thanksgiving themed show, as we do every year. So we've got some Thanksgiving themed segments here for you. Then we will jump into our parlays and then the games to watch for the week. But really quickly, we'll jump into our weekly recap here. Tom, what were you watching in week 13? Like you said pre show just now, a lot of interesting upsets.
Yeah, look, Brian, great to be here. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Excited to be here with you tonight. Yeah, look, there are a lot of upsets, but first, let's just start with the favorites. Ohio State beaten Indiana. Curtis Rourke just 68 passing yards on Saturday. The Buckeyes had 5 sacks and over 200 rushing yards. They're a dominant football team, Brian. I would say top 3 in the nation. You and I also stuck together with that Minnesota pick, and boy, should we have hit on that. Minnesota should have won the game outright. Penn State survives by 1 point on the road. Tight end Tyler Warren is the real deal. In my opinion, he's the best tight end in the nation, even over Harold Fenton Jr. for Bowling Green. My Fighting Irish blowing out Army 49-14. The Irish rushing for 275 yards and 5 touchdowns. Those were the favorites. Now, the upsets. I won't go through all, but a couple that really stuck out to me. Oklahoma smoking up Alabama. And not just that, holding them to 3 points.
Yes.
Forcing 3 Jalen Milroe interceptions. And I think Milroe is out of the first round NFL draft conversation now after that performance. He should not enter back in. In fact, I think he should go back to school after that performance. And then the Tide's defense not being able to stop the run. And I know we'll talk about it later, Brian, but it's going to be really tough for the committee to try to convince the public in America to put Alabama in this CFP. Speaking of the CFP, I would say Ole Miss now out of the CFP, getting upset by the Florida Gators in the swamp. Trey Harris, nation's leading receiver, over majority of the season held to just 1 catch. And since he's not here, I want to shout out Andy's Fighting Illini. As time expires, Pat Bryant with a game-winning touchdown nearly had over 200 receiving yards. Illinois beats Rutgers on the road, comes out of Piscataway, New Jersey, and the lowly Northeast with a win.
Yeah, I had that on my notes there as well to give him a little shout out there because that was incredible. He jumped right in the group chat about that one. Did not see that coming, but I guess that's a classic Rutgers move there to allow a play in the dying seconds to lose the game. But yeah, just very quickly, going to touch on basically the same games that you did because they were the ones everyone was watching. Indiana, Ohio State. Listen, I think everyone realized Ohio State was the better team here, but I didn't think it was going to be that dominant. I mean, Indiana looked like they were struggling for the majority of that game. They didn't really get settled in until the fourth quarter, which at that point the game was gone, and maybe that was just a result of Ohio State tuning it down a little bit to save some energy. Texas takes down Kentucky. They've got a big game this week. We'll talk about that later, but they've done basically what they need to do. I think they're high enough now that regardless whether or not they lose this rivalry game, they should be safe. If only because the committee kind of said, if you make it to a conference championship game and, lose it because of the way the new playoffs are with 12 teams, they're going to try to not penalize teams because, only a certain amount of teams can play in the conference championships. And obviously, it's a bit of an advantage if you're sitting there towards the bottom half and you do not have to play because you're not going to get knocked down any spots there. Shout out to your Notre Dame team taking down Army. I think I said on the show I was giving them a 21-point buffer there. They exceeded expectations, beating the Black Knights by 35. Alabama over Oklahoma, like you said, very dominant win there. And then Florida, another one that'll be on our card later today because back-to-back, they beat ranked teams after a bit of a slow start to the season. So definitely some good upsets and a lot of good games from there in Week 13. But we'll jump into our first theme segment here. It is Giving Thanks. We're going to pick a few players, coaches, what have you here, that we're going to give thanks to, what they're thankful for, serious, funny, whatever you want. Tom, what do you got for us?
All right, so giving thanks up first. I got 2, and they both have to do with my team.
Okay.
So it might be a little biased here, but first up, NIU head coach Thomas Hammock. The NIU loss taught Marcus Freeman a lot about himself and his team. It's like a light switch went off with the Irish. Hammock called Freeman. We talked about this back in week 2. I mean, Notre Dame was in the doghouse after week 2, Brian. All 3 of us were saying it. We wouldn't pick them again the rest of the season. against the spread, like all this stuff, and then they just come out and blow everybody out the rest of the way. I mean, how impressive is that? Along the way, Louisville, Georgia Tech, um, you got Navy, Army, USC this weekend. They're not just beating people; they're beating the crap out of them, and it's a testament to the lessons that Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame took from that week 2 loss. And I think that loss happened so early, Brian. This Notre Dame team really had to come together and realize that they have not little, zero margin for error the
Right.
remainder of the season. And Brian, Notre Dame has committed zero margin of error the last 10 weeks. And that is a testament to the lessons that I think personally that Thomas Hammock taught Marcus Freeman. And I'm very thankful for Thomas Hammock because of that. Great coach.
Before you get to your next one, didn't after that game, if I'm remembering correctly, he like jumped on a call or something with Freeman to tell him like what he thought Notre Dame did wrong in that game?
He told him how he beat them and what he did wrong, what he could have done differently down the stretch. He cracked the code to Notre Dame. Nobody else has been able to figure it out. And what's crazy, NIU's not that good. They're still like around 500 on the
Yeah.
season. They've lost to some MAC teams. So that loss for Notre Dame is horrible, Brian. There's a top 5 team in the nation right now that has a loss to a MAC team. And it's Thomas Hammock's team.
Incredible.
Crazy. Yeah.
What's your second one here?
My second is the entire Notre Dame offensive line. Now, Brian, you know me pretty well. Beginning of the season, what was my biggest concern outside of the quarterback change? Notre Dame's O-line. They lost Joe Alt and Blake Fisher to the NFL draft, and I was not sure how the O-line was going to look, especially after starting left tackle Charles Jagashaw suffered a season-ending injury. His season ended before it got started. Starting center Ashton Craig suffered a season-ending knee injury in week 3 against Purdue. So, Brian, you're talking about 2 starting offensive linemen down with season-ending injuries. Guard Sam Pendleton got benched early on in the season. It was really, really bad. But the 5 who have been out there over the past 2 months have been phenomenal. 18-year-old freshman Antoine Knapp is a stud. I mean, he's picking up right where Joe Alt left off. He's good with his hands, quick with his feet. He doesn't reach for defenders. He slides his body very well, has good body control. Billy Schroff, the redshirt sophomore, really, really good run blocker, zone blocker, combo blocker. Pat Coogan at center, redshirt junior, still has another year of eligibility, solid player. Rocco Spindler, a redshirt junior, another guy who pulls well when Notre Dame likes to run outside zone. And then finally, Emil Wagner, the redshirt sophomore. Brian, what's the common denominator here? None of these guys are seniors. And that's what makes this so damn special. They're all going to be back again next season. And Riley Leonard has only been sacked 10 times the entire season. 10. Incredible. Shout out to that offensive line. And this is why they're ranked as high as they are. This is why they came back from that NIU loss and have blown everybody out since. Their offensive line has been the best in the nation.
Yeah, which is incredible because as you noted, the age so young. If that group stays together, which Notre Dame doesn't strike me as a team where kids are going to run off for NIL money. So if that group sticks together, that's going to be a scary O line. If you're a QB recruit, looking for places to go, you want that protection. Maybe take a look at Notre Dame there, seek them out because you're going to be getting some really good protection with that O line. I agree. First up for me, I've got Alabama giving thanks to their name recognition this season. This week's CFP rankings came out, and Alabama, wouldn't you know it, the committee has put them just outside the top 12. Relevant because obviously, 1 week left and the conference championship games, they basically only need one team to slip up, which is bound to happen to get right back into the discussion, at least as far as the committee goes. I know a lot of people in the college football fandom might not have them in the discussion to be worthy of a slot. But yeah, the name recognition I think is playing a huge role here. I just don't. I understand they've had a coaching change, and you probably would give this sort of bump to a Saban-led Alabama because that's something you can trust. But listen, this is the Boers' first season, and currently they're sporting losses to a 5-loss Vanderbilt, who I love, by the way. They've improved greatly, but it's still a 5-loss team. A 5-loss Oklahoma team who just blew them out of the water, and like you said earlier, held them to 3 points. These are not top losses, and they've got another loss obviously on the books. A ranked loss, but still, this is a 3-loss team with 2 very bad losses. I know people talk about like the SEC bump that those teams get there from the committee. I think this is compounded here with a little bit of an Alabama name recognition bump. So they're definitely thankful to be sitting where they are because of that right now. Second up, I have Travis Hunter. Thankful for the Deion Sanders hype train that I think, in my opinion, has been inflating his Heisman shot this year. He was in the mix, I would say, but definitely not a top. Obviously, Cam Ward ahead of him for a bit. Dylan Gabriel ahead of him. I know statistics wise he's not near Cam Ward, but Oregon number one in the nation has a legitimate shot at the CFP, so he's been up there. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty there in the talks, and to me that is the leader, Jeanty. And I just kind of want to run through these stats. Like I don't even want to give reasons because just hearing these stats out loud makes it obvious, at least to me, that GT should at least be leading at this point in time. Travis Hunter, we talk about him being a two-way player, so let's go over his stats. Receptions, he is sixth in the nation. Not bad. He is a good receiver. Receiving yards per game, 14th. Up there, but not doing anything super special. Receiving yards per reception, outside of the top 100. That's the most surprising one to me because this offense, like I said a few weeks ago, is built around basically padding Shadur Sanders' stats. And who is his go-to guy? It is Travis Hunter. Yet he cannot crack the top 100 in yards per reception. Receiving TDs, eighth, good, but still not super elite. And Colorado's total offense with that Sanders Travis Hunter connection there sits at 56th in the nation. So they're not blowing people's minds here with his offense. Let's talk about his defense. Interceptions tied for 29th. Pass deflections tied for 23rd. Colorado's defense as a whole in the pass game 53rd. Good, but that's more middle of the pack than I would say a top defense. So to me, with stats like that, you would need to be kind of in Dylan Gabriel's shoes, where you are contending for a national title. I think you can get away with those stats if you are beating those teams deep in the playoffs. You don't necessarily need to win, but you do need to be elite in the top games. Colorado's competition hasn't been there. They're probably barring a miracle, are not going to be in the playoffs. So to me, that makes GT the head here. Rush yards, first in the nation. Rush attempts, first in the nation. Rush yards per attempt, 7.5. That's tied for third in the nation. Yards from scrimmage, first in the nation. Rushing touchdowns, first in the nation. Total touchdowns, first in the nation. Are you sensing a theme here, Tom? He is the best of the best, Ashton GT, at what he does. I just do not. I know Travis Hunter tries to make the argument, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was basically GT is trying to break a record while Travis is trying to set one for the first time. But, I mean, GT is blowing everything out of the water right now. Boise State has a better chance at getting in the playoffs than Colorado right now. So it would be interesting to see what happens in other people's minds, especially, the odds here for winning the Heisman if Boise State makes it and GT has a good performance in the playoffs and Colorado does not. But yeah, for me, I think Travis Hunter definitely riding on that Deion hype train. That'll bring us into our next theme segment here. It is Black Friday sale. Listen, don't go out there and fight people over electronics, folks. I assure you the deals are not that great. But we're going to give you a few picks for a few CFB disappointments that we would say are going to be on fire sale, should we say, for their poor performance. Tom, give me your first one here.
Yeah, I'm selling Carson back hard this year. I picked this guy as my favorite to win the Heisman at the beginning of the season. He has been everything but a Heisman candidate in 2024. Just 23 touchdowns to 12 picks, 3 games with 3 interceptions, 3 against Bama, Texas, and Florida. Awful. His month of October was really, really bad. November got a little bit better, but not by much. Very disappointed in his performance. I think this hurts his draft stock, Ryan. I think he winds up finding himself out of the first round, maybe even the second if this keeps up. They got Gunnar Stockton knocking on the door for next year. I mean, we'll see what happens with Beck. I still like the kid. Let's see how he does this weekend and in the SEC championship game, assuming they do beat Georgia Tech. They will get there and play the winner of Texas A&M. I think Georgia's already locked to be in it, so yeah, that'll be interesting. And then the CFP as well. Prove me wrong, Carson Beck. Next up, he never goes away from this show. Brian Kelly, the head coach of LSU. They're sitting at 7-4, 6th in the SEC. This is not what they hired Brian Kelly to do. They've lost 3 out of their last 4 games. They're coming off a win against Vanderbilt, but just by 7 points at home. I know Vanderbilt's better this year, but Brian, you mentioned it before. 5-loss team. Not great. And the way he handles his players, very, very poorly and outdated. The team does not seem bought into him, which is a major red flag for recruits, for vendors, for all these people moving forward, that you have to deal with this guy. And Kelly, he's getting up there in age, early 60s. He's starting to become a little senile because of the way he handles the locker room. These guys are teenagers. You need a guy that can relate a little bit more to the players that could still bring that old school physical mentality. You have to be able to manage both. And I don't think Brian Kelly is able to do that at the SEC level. He did it at Notre Dame for what it was worth. It's not working here at LSU. So yeah, I'm disappointed, man. 7-4, 6 in the SEC for what he's making. Not ideal. I get it. You lost Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., but man, do better, BK. Do better.
All right. For me, first up, I got a coach as well for you. It is Lincoln Riley over at USC. Like Brian Kelly, moving from one of the perennial top dogs to another top dog, but the project to me seems to be fizzling out. Maybe just at the start, the spark has just happened, but to me, I think the writing is on the wall here after just 3 years into this 10-year deal. I think he's another example of a coach who inherited a good team, got very lucky with. I don't want to call Caleb Williams a once in a generation QB, but he was very, very skilled. I think he was very lucky to be able to keep him during that tenure. But yeah, he inherited a team that got him 11-3 the first year. Then they went 8-5, and now that was with Caleb Williams still. And now this year, the first year without him, they're 6-5, and at best they match their record from last season. With that bowl game, with that game this week. But I don't want to spoil too much because we might be talking about them a little later in the games of the week. I don't think they're gonna pull off a win this week. So I think again this season their record is gonna slide yet again. The problem here for USC is that this 10-year, $110 million contract is currently sitting at an estimated $80 million buyout. So the California schools are pretty tight with their wallets compared to the rest of the well, especially the Southern teams, let's say. So I don't think 80 million is something they're going to throw at Lincoln Riley to leave right now. Maybe they'll negotiate something down. If he stays another season and it doesn't work, maybe they can convince him to take 40 and get the hell out of Dodge. But I don't know if this project is working there with Riley at USC. And then second up, maybe the biggest sale. Maybe they should be giving this one away for free. It is FSU. This has been a historically bad season for the Noles. They started the season 0-3 against very not great competition. Their only two wins so far this season are over a 6-5 Cal and against Charleston Southern, which is basically a win that probably shouldn't even count. If we're being honest, they're 2-9. They sit 17th in the ACC, and they are going to watch very possibly the team that they used in their lawsuit as an example of weakness, weakening the ACC's TV money deal. SMU, they might be watching them win the conference very soon as they sit at the bottom of the ACC. So it's been a hell of a bad season for FSU. But guess what? If you're an absolute sicko, we've got them on the card later because they will be playing Florida in a rivalry game this Saturday. So buckle up. You got Florida FSU action coming up. That'll wrap up the theme segments of the week and run us into our weekly parlay party. Because it is a holiday, there are no rules here. Tom, you can give us whatever you got here. 2 picks, 10 picks, plus 1,000, plus 10,000. What do you got for us?
Just give me all the underdogs on their money lines. Let's do that. No, I'm kidding. 5 legs this week. Chop one off. Vanderbilt plus 14.5. I like their odds to cover that spread. Minus 166. Illinois by a touchdown. Minus 6.5. That comes in at minus 142. Northwestern has been okay again this year. Their program has improved, but they've improved from a doormat to below average. That's what you're looking at there. Illinois looking to finish the season with 9 regular season wins. Notre Dame minus 7.5. This is plus money. I'm surprised, Brian, they made this plus money because Notre Dame has been a beast at covering the spread. They've done it every week since week 3. Texas A&M. I don't want to spoil who I'm taking for this game, so I went ahead and I took the points. I took the over 45.5 points. Seems like a safe bet to me. And then Clemson minus 2.5. They usually win the Battle of South Carolina, so that comes in at minus 114. Plus 15.28, $10 for 152.84. That's my parlay of the week. A little safer this week.
I love it. I gave you free reign, and you still went for the plus 1,000. We love our risky bets here for the money. I'm going to run very quickly. I apologize for this. I realized I didn't do, I had a third giving thanks, so I'll just run through it very quickly because this was a really interesting stat that I saw someone post here. It is fans giving thanks to conference realignment, there's a very good chance that every single Power Four conference plus the American is won by a team that was not in the conference the year prior. That is an insane stat to me. In the Big Ten, obviously we have Oregon flying high. They're the only remaining undefeated FBS team in the SEC. You got Texas, a team that on average was pretty shaky in the Big 12. We didn't know how they were going to do. They now lead the SEC. They've got wins over Oklahoma, who was number 10 at the time. They've fallen off a bit, but they just beat Bama. Vanderbilt, in their singular loss, is to number 7 Georgia. In the ACC, it's that pesky team out of Dallas that I just talked about, SMU. They've got a solid chance at being at least in the conference championship game. And then Colorado, led by the Sanders family and Heisman favorite Travis Hunter, is in a four-way tie for the Big 12 lead. And then, of course, rounding it out in the American, Military Academy Army leads the conference, and we'll have a showdown with number 17 Tulane for the conference championship. So that is just an insane stat for me. Sorry that I missed that one, but I really wanted to bring that up because I read that and it just kind of blew my mind. Will all five win it? Probably not. But it's really cool to see that the realignment hasn't just thrown all these teams to the dogs. I know we talk about whether or not realignment was a good or bad thing, but it is spicing things up. That is for sure. Back into the parlays. Throw mine up on the board. I have 4 picks here for a plus 702. I have first up Alabama -7 versus Auburn. In the same vein as you, Tom, when we were talking about the weekly recap, I think Alabama is gonna rebound here because they got absolutely walloped last week. This is a rivalry game. They need this win to solidify a shot in the playoffs. The committee has given them the chance for that, so they're gonna fight like dogs to get this win. Next up, Washington State -13 over Wyoming. Wyoming, not a very good team, 2 wins on the season. Washington State, John Mateer, he can really produce, so I think -13 points. I feel safe enough there at -170. Arkansas money line at Mizzou, that is plus 120. This is probably the sketchiest on the card here. But Arkansas, their losses aren't bad. Like, they're to good teams. Mizzou has been struggling. They're a bit wishy-washy, so this really bumps the payout up. So I threw them in the card because I think they can. It's on the road, but I think they can pull it off. Georgia -13 rounds it out against Georgia Tech. This is in a similar vein to how I looked at the Notre Dame Army game last week. I think this is basically a free one in my mind. Georgia wants to be fighting for home field in that first round, or the bye week if they can win the SEC. But they need to win this game. They need to prove a point here against Georgia Tech. So I think they beat the brakes off of the Yellow Jackets. That is $10 to win 80 and 21. That'll move us into finally the shots and chasers, the games of the week that you should be watching. And as we ran this a few weeks ago, I liked it, so we're bringing it back. The midday slot here is a pick'em. We're going to pick our favorite game or who we think might be the most likely to pull an interesting upset here on Thanksgiving weekend. Tom, starting in the noon slot, we have a game that you just talked about, Clemson taking on South Carolina, number 12 versus number 15. The battle for South Carolina. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I think these are 2 really good ranked teams that are trending in the right direction. For Clemson, it's been a relatively consistent season for them. Cade Klubnik at quarterback, 34 total touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. He's really developed nicely, and he's benefited from having veterans he could lean on like Phil Maffa and Antonio Williams. Now, for Clemson to get into the ACC title game, to your point, Brian, the conference realignment, SMU's already clinched. If Miami wins, they're in. So Clemson needs a win and a Miami loss at Syracuse up in the dome for them to have a chance. South Carolina has 3 losses this year, just to Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M. Lenora Sellers, inconsistent this year, but he's been improving. Raheem Sanders is the bell cow on offense. Josh Simon, 6 touchdowns at tight end. When in doubt, Brian, I usually say take the SEC, but not this time. Clemson needs it more. I already picked them in my parlay party. I can't go against that.
Right.
Give me the Tigers, and I like them to ground and pound their way to their 10th victory of the season.
Yeah, Clemson here. We haven't really had much opportunities to talk about them, despite being a top 12 team that kind of just slid into like the 3rd or 4th best game of the week, so they haven't made the card. But yeah, they've been a pretty potent offense for sure this season. It's leveled off a bit in terms of production lately, but it was a very hot start to the season. But South Carolina, they've been really good at getting to the QB. They're going to need to do that consistently in this game if they want to fluster Klubnik and force him into making some mistakes, because that is not something he's accustomed to doing this season. His passing has been really pure. He's making good decisions. And he's not really getting name dropped as much compared to the other top QBs in the nation, but I think he warrants at least being in that discussion. He's got only 4 interceptions on the year. Like I said, his decision making is really good. I think he's got 29 TDs there. And if he can avoid the pressure here, I think they do all right. But South Carolina can bring it on the D line here. Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders, Dylan Stewart, and most especially Kyle Kennard, who leads the Cox with 11.5 sacks. He's going to have to avoid all of them. It's going to be a tough battle here for Clemson's O line. They can have some success, Clemson's offense, but man, even if you avoid that defensive line, that pressure, and the secondary, they've got some dogs as well on South Carolina. O'Donnell Fortune, he's got 3 picks. Jalen Kilgore, he's got 4. Nick Eminwuri, he's got 4, and 2 of those he's taken to the house. So South Carolina has been trending upwards quickly. I think this is going to be a really fun one to watch, but because of the defensive prowess of this Gamecocks side this year, I'm going to go with the Cox. Next up, we have a game. Beginning of the year, it looked pretty exciting. Michigan has not stepped up to the plate, but it's still a big rivalry game. We have number 2 Ohio State taking on Michigan. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I can't believe this is a chaser. This is normally a shot on our card.
Yeah.
It's not this season. Yeah, 3 touchdown favorites the Buckeyes are. They took it to Indiana last week. But when these two teams play, it's usually a closer game. I'm not sure about this year due to the incompetence from Michigan, but it's going to come down to the trenches. Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson against Mason Graham and Kenneth Graham. Mason Graham, top 10 pick in this year's draft right now, has really solidified himself in the teeth of that Wolverines defense. I'm glad he's still getting recognized despite being only on a 6-win team right now. Sean Moore really has to find out how to stop that running game. Will Howard is a very good quarterback that can make passes consistently, 74% completion percentage, 26 touchdowns to just 6 picks. So it's weird to say make him beat you, but in this game, you can't let the run beat you. So you got to make Will Howard throw the football. Now in coverage, Wink Martindale's defense has to send the house. Don't give Howard time to get it out to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ikbuka. Each of them have 9 receiving touchdowns apiece on the season. And defensively, Brian, this is another problem. How are the Michigan tackles going to hold up and absorb Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau? They won't. They're too much to handle. Wolverines lost 2 out of their last 3 games. They're on a cold spell. Give me Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, the shoe is definitely on the proverbial other foot for the first time in 4 years here. Like you said, this almost was, when I first wrote up the card for this week, this was in the shot category, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it because of how bad Michigan has done. So it gets relegated into the chaser slot. But yeah, listen, Jim Harbaugh's last 3 years at Michigan, he pulled the trifecta in this rivalry game. But the reality is, this is 2024. Ohio State is number 2 in the nation, and Michigan is 1 game above 500. So there's a big gap in talent and production and performance here this year. Despite playing one of the top QB recruits in the nation this past week, Michigan's current QB situation is basically hopeless. Davis Warren is likely to be the starter again this Saturday. That's a QB who lost his starting job after just 3 games into the season. Then he won it back these past 4 games, which I don't know if you would call it winning it back. It's kind of everyone else just stumbled over their own feet, and now he's back in the drive. Obviously, there was an injury involved there late, but again, all of their quarterbacks have been stumbling. But yeah, in both stints combined for him, he's thrown just 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, despite the fact that his O-line has done really well to protect him. So, like you said, those guys are going to be coming at him. I think that'll be an interesting battle to watch, especially because of how productive they've been in that protection. But yeah, as far as Warren goes, he's broken the 200, not 300, the 200-yard mark just once in his 7 games this season, and he broke that by just 4 yards. That was a 204-yard game where he had to throw the ball 33 times to get to that mark, so not super great there. Yeah, like you said, the Michigan O-line, they're going to have their work cut out for them because Ohio State, if you watched last week, that dominating game against Indiana, they managed to get to Curtis Rourke 5 times for 5 sacks last Saturday. And I can tell you one thing for sure, the Buckeyes sure hate Michigan way more than they hate Indiana, so they're going to be coming flying in to try and get Warren Davis down. It's going to be a bloodbath in the trenches there. The issue here for me, which this isn't really solely a Michigan problem, I think it's just a general problem. You mentioned the weapons. How do you stop all those elite weapons for the Buckeyes that they've stuffed into this offense? Michigan has a little bit of reprieve here in what is probably the best DB in the nation in Will Johnson. He'll probably be a top 5 pick in the draft, top 10 at the worst. But unfortunately, in terms of the science of cloning, We're still years away from that. So Michigan's problem here is that they only have one Will Johnson, and they need at least two or three of them if they want to help stop this absolutely insane Ohio State offense here. So yeah, I think the easy pick here is the Buckeyes. Moving into our midday slot, like I said, we get to choose here the most interesting or who we think will be the most obvious upset. And Tom, I'm going to ask you really quickly, do you notice the theme of why those teams on the left are in the shots and why the teams on the right are in the chasers? I'll pay for your parlay. I'll double your input of what you're paying for the parlay if you can guess it.
Um,
So we've got, for audio listeners, USC versus Notre Dame and Arizona versus Arizona State on the left in the shot, and Penn State, Maryland, Alabama, Auburn, and Miami, Syracuse on the right side in the chasers.
is it the teams on the left have covered, the teams on the right have not covered? You don't
That
sound too.
that is
I don't think that's it.
that is incorrect. This is a West versus East. West is the west of the Mississippi. Right side is east of the Mississippi River.
Oh,
Yeah, I had to figure out a way to do a split here.
clever.
Yes. So starting on the West Coast with our shots here, we've got USC versus Notre Dame, Arizona versus Arizona State. Which game are you picking here?
I'm going Notre Dame USC, the most interesting game for me, because this is a classic rivalry. The Irish have won 5 out of the last 6 meetings, 48-20 last year. They forced 3 Caleb Williams interceptions, and that play from Caleb has translated perfectly into the NFL. If you're Notre Dame, it's simple: a win, and you're in the CFP, and you host a first-round playoff game. A loss, and your season is over. A bowl game. Notre Dame cannot afford 2 losses. It's crazy because Alabama, they could afford 3. Notre Dame can't afford more than 1. Riley Leonard has been phenomenal this season. He's really proved a lot of people wrong, myself included. 14 touchdowns through the air, just 4 picks, 13 on the ground. He's a threat. The Irish average 221 rushing yards per game, and it starts with Jeremiah Love, who really brought the love last Saturday night at Yankee Stadium. 7 rushes for 130 yards. There's my one bad pun of the night, Brian. Average 7 yards per carry, 14 touchdowns on the season. Now, this is where the game is won. Notre Dame held Army, a predominantly rushing team, one of the best run teams in the nation, Brian McCardle, to 3.6 yards per carry last week. If you are allowing a dominant rushing team to under 4 yards per carry, you're doing something right. And what's even better, they did it without Howard Cross III. We know Riley Mills, 5th-year guy, graduate student, 6.5 sacks. He's been great, but the question, Brian, is who's played next to him? It's been a combination of Donovan Heinisch and Gabriel Rubio. Heinisch, 3.5 sacks on the season. Howard Cross III is still questionable at this time. And the fact that Notre Dame is able to just plug and play guys that aren't necessarily starters, it speaks volumes to Al Golden's defense. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the nation. Look at the development of their safeties, Xavier Watson, Adon Schuler. They have a knack for causing turnovers, and whether it's Miller Moss and USC or Quinn Ewers in Texas, this defense is going to give teams nightmares. Despite this one being on the road, I like Notre Dame to win and cover by 10 to 13 points.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to go with the other one here, so we'll get coverage on both. I'm going to go Arizona versus Arizona State. This is an intriguing one to me. Arizona State comes into the game having lost the last 2 matchups to their rival here, and the Wildcats have returned by far the 2 best players from those wins, Noah Fafita at QB and Teteroa McMillan at wide receiver, who, as of recently, is looking to be, also a top 5 pick in the draft, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, they're obviously the 2 weapons that they need to watch if you are a Sun Devils defender. Who hasn't returned, though? It's head coach Jed Fish. He left for Washington, and his absence has definitely shown as the Wildcats have struggled this season. Their performances have been a bit chaotic. So this one, I think, is going to depend on which Arizona team shows up. Is it the one that beat Utah handedly? Or is it the one that panics when they come up against ranked opposition, like Arizona State is, and loses in blowout fashion, as they did to Kansas State, to BYU, to Colorado? And I'll tell you what, even my lowly UCF beat them. So there are definitely issues there, especially on the defense. Sun Devils coming off back-to-back ranked wins. They beat Kansas State, number 20, and then number 19, BYU. That is in large part due to Cam Scatabo. He was my player to watch last week. He returned from injury. He went for 147 yards on the ground and 3 TDs against a BYU defense that is much better than this Arizona team. So, like I said, it'll depend on which Arizona team shows up. Maybe we'll see an upset here to knock Arizona State out of Big 12 conference title game contention. But I'm still going to lean Arizona State, but I'll be keeping an eye on this one. And then east of the Mississippi we go into our chaser here. The 3 games to choose from. Number 4, Penn State versus Maryland. number 13 Alabama versus Auburn, or number 6 Miami versus Syracuse. Tom, who are you picking east of that old Mississippi River?
So I'm picking the Miami Syracuse game, and this is why. Syracuse football head coach Fran Brown on Reddit 2 days ago. This was reported by John Wicks is behind you. Love that. Um, Wonders why his team isn't ranked. I don't know what it takes. It takes more than winning 8 games in the ACC to be ranked. Sir, hate to break it to you. Miami's favored by 11 in this game. Miami is on upset watch this week. All they have to do is win, and they're into the ACC championship game. This offense averages 45 points per game, and it's thanks to Cam Ward, who's thrown for nearly 3,800 yards, 34 touchdown passes. Great transfer from Wazoo. Another great transfer from Oregon State and Damian Martinez. Finally has a good quarterback to bode well with him. Huge upgrade from Ukulele to Ward. And then receivers-wise, Restrepo with 10 scores, George with 7, Horton with 5. They all bring something different to the table. Defensively, they have dogs back there. Michelle Powell with 5 picks. Simeon Barrow Jr., 5.5. But these teams have not met since 2017. Canes have struggled on the road. Look how they performed against Louisville this season. They're the Washington of this year, in my opinion. Kyle McCord played for Ohio State last year. He knows how to get it done. He's thrown for just under 4,000 yards. Yes, he's thrown 12 picks this year, but he's also thrown 26 touchdowns, and he has limited the mental errors over the last several weeks. Relies a lot on LaQuint Allen, who brings a lot of dual threat capabilities, 12 rushing touchdowns, and 55 receptions for a running back. That's impressive through 11 games, how you slice it and dice it. He's averaging 5 catches per game, Brian. There's your ratio of tonight. And Rondé Gadsden, I'll give him credit. The transition from wide receiver to tight end has not been easy this season, but he's embraced it, and he's embraced it well. Defensively, Fadil Diggs must get to Cam Ward. This will be a 3 to 4 point game. Miami survives, but does not cover the spread and will advance to the ACC title game limping.
Oof. Yeah, since you covered a lot of Miami, I'll try to focus on Syracuse here a little bit. Kyle McCord, obviously the transfer QB, he's another one on my list of QB talents there, along with Klubnik, who probably isn't talked about as much as he should be. I mean, obviously it's partially because of Syracuse name brand not being as high as these other teams, partially because of the ACC and the weaker schedule. But he's done pretty well. He's got a strong arm. It's accurate, and that's enabled him to both hit deep routes pretty effectively and force it into tight windows there along the sidelines to help prevent any interceptions from players that want to try and jump routes on him. He leads the nation in passing yards, 300 plus yard games and completions. So yeah, they do focus a little more on the passing game than the rush, but he's taking what he's been given and he's giving back lots of production. My one note here for Miami, I'll say, is that my big concern is that while Miami may not have a top defense and is especially lacking, in the secondary, their D line is ferocious, and Syracuse is going to have issues there. They've got a team total of 32 sacks this season, with sacks registered from 15 different players. Like you said, that's led by Simeon Barrow Jr. He's got 5.5. They do have one shining star in the secondary. That's Michelle Powell. He has 4 pass breakups and 5 interceptions. And my concern for McCord here, especially, is that Syracuse doesn't really have a star-studded wide receiver room. Like you said, Gadsden, who made the transition to tight end, he leads the team in receiving yards. So not many top targets there. And with the QB room like that, I think it could get locked down pretty easily because obviously they're going to put Powell on wide receiver number 1, and then you're forced to go to guys like Gadsden, who's got good hands, but you're not going to get as much production out of your slower tight ends. And like I said, the running game not top notch there for Syracuse. Luckily for McCord, he's only had a ton of mistakes one time that have come back to bite him, and that was when he threw 5 interceptions against Pitt. Every other game, he's been pretty smart, I'll say, with his passes. So I think Syracuse has the opportunity for the upset here. Do they get it done? I'm going to say yes. This is in the Carrier Dome. It is indoor. They're on turf. Different situation. And, we've talked about it 5 or 6 times this season already. Miami lets teams stay with them. That is dangerous to do. It's bit them in the ass once. And you know what? I think Kyle McCord is just going to go absolutely ham. They're going to let him throw all game long. The coaching staff, that is, not Miami's defense. But yeah, I don't think that secondary, if they can avoid the pressure, I don't think that secondary is going to be able to hold McCord back from this upset. So that is my shocker pick here for you in Week 14. That'll move us into the night games here, rounding it out with the late nighters. We have, first up, Texas A&M, number 20, taking on number 3, Texas. Tom, who do you like in this game?
Boy, lights are going to be shining bright at College Station, baby. You already know. Texas favored by 5 on the road. These teams have not met since 2011, the Johnny Manziel days. Uh, Look, Texas has won 4 straight. Their only loss this year was to Georgia. Quinn Ewers is healthy, I should say. He's not 100%. He has not been playing 100% the whole season. It's hurt his draft stock, but he still has the weapons to look really good under center. Gunnar Helm at tight end, 5 touchdowns on the season, good viable threat, crossing patterns, out routes over the middle of the field. Isaiah Bond, the transfer from Alabama, very valuable acquisition. Matt Golden as well, 8 scores on the season, very happy with his performance. And then defensively, they have some dogs, Brian. Anthony Hill Jr., 7.5 sacks. Andrew Mukaba, the transfer from Clemson, has been really good with 4 picks. And for A&M, head coach Mike Elko and quarterback Marcel Reed, they've been great stories, but the reality is, and it's setting in, they're cooked. They've run out of gas. They're coming off a 4 overtime loss to Auburn. Their offense has revolved around Moss and Daniels the whole season long. They averaged 208 rushing yards per game. They will not eclipse that this weekend. Nick Scorton has not gotten to the quarterback enough. They will not be able to cause as many turnovers as they would like. Texas wins and covers.
Yeah, like you said, about the last time these two teams met, that was during the another conference realignment, and this is one of those historic rivalries that they couldn't find a way, and probably should have found a way to keep going, because they had been playing each other almost every season when available. Obviously, we had a few world wars sprinkled in there, but almost every year from 1915 up until that 2011 season. So glad to have this one back on the college football slate. Listen, we all know what Quinn Ewers can do, so all eyes here, I think, are going to be on the other QB in the game. That's Marcel Reed. He is now locked in as the Aggie starter. Finally, after 4 straight starts, we weren't sure between him and Weigman who Elko was going to stick with based on the performances, but it appears to be Reed going forward. The winner of this game guarantees a spot in the SEC championship versus Georgia, so everything is on the line here, most especially for Texas A&M, who's sitting just outside of those playoff spots. Texas A&M's run game versus Texas's run defense. That's going to be the matchup to watch for me. They want to open up the field for Marcel Reed, so they really, really need to get that run game going there. The Aggies, they rank 17th in the country with, like you said, 208 yards average rushing per game. The Longhorns on the other side, they are tough. They are 13th in the nation against the run. They hold teams to just 104 yards on average. That's low. You want something lower? This past Saturday, they showed just how good they were against the run. That brick wall of a D-line allowed Kentucky just 21 rushing yards on 30 attempts. Absolute stonewalled Kentucky there. On the other side of things, though, Texas A&M, they put up at least 200 yards rushing in 6 games. So this is going to be a heck of a battle as far as the run goes. For Texas's offense, just really quick, I'll throw in a tight end note for you because I'm here with you, Tom, and I know you love your tight ends. Gunnar Helm leading the team in receiving. He's a player who his first 3 years just had a total 19 catches combined. This season, he's got 42 receptions for over 500 yards. He's 6'5", 250, and he's got really good hands. So he really, really needs to be watched by the Texas A&M linebacking core, that secondary, because he can get loose there for Quinn Ewers and absolutely open up that offense. Who do I go with? I think I'm going to stick with Texas. I like where Texas A&M is trending. I just don't think they're on the same level as Texas right now. I think it's going to be close, though. This is in College Station, like you said. Part of me just wants to pick Texas A&M for the craziness. But I'm going to lean Longhorns here. I can't do it to myself. Then, like I said, rounding out, we had a sicko game for everyone. We have a team barely above 500 in Florida taking on 2-9 FSU. A rivalry that was once on a pedestal has drooped and just flopped off the pedestal entirely for this one. Tom, who do you like in this one? I guess who do you like, and are you going to be watching this one, if not for anything else than entertainment value?
Yeah, if you want a good laugh, and if you're a relative of Brian McCardle's, you're watching this game 100%. I know, Brian, your family has some eggs into the basket for this game.
Yep.
Laid out there. Look, Gators are coming off a hot upset of Ole Miss. This has all the potential in the world for this to be a blowout or a crazy letdown. They last won in Tallahassee in 2018. Lagway's been a great story defensively for them. I'm looking at Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks. Those two were really, really good last week. They forced 2 Jackson Dart picks. And let's be real, Florida State has been all around awful this season. Coach Norvell is on the hot seat. It's scorching hot right now. You can't go from a CFP contender undefeated to 2-9. It just can't happen. Gators are favored by 14.5. For some reason, I think the Noles will cover this spread.
Okay.
Florida just, I have a weird feeling about this game that Florida State's going to go like up 3-0 early, 6-3, and then the Gators are going to pull away, win by a final score of like, I don't know, like 26-12 or 13, something along those lines. Florida.
So you think, because this is at FSU, you think they're going to let everyone down by getting up early, getting hopes up, and then just getting absolutely crushed?
100%, Brian.
Yeah, that fits with the way FSU has been playing this year. Yeah, listen, like you said, FSU, they've had an abysmal season this year. They sport a 2-9 record. The Gators weren't doing too much better, but these last 2 weeks have been shocking in a good way. They took down ranked LSU, and then they beat a top 10 Ole Miss team. They are barely above 500, like I said, but I think they deserve a little bit of a pass because looking at their schedule, they've had it really, really tough. And I don't think that their current record is, I don't think it shows the true Gators team. I don't think they're great. They are still 6-5. But look at this absolute gauntlet that they had in their schedule. Number 19 Miami in the season opener. Miami's one of the top teams in the nation now. Texas A&M week 3. Number 8 Tennessee on the road. Then this is their last 4 weeks. Number 2 Georgia. Number 5 Texas on the road. Number 22 LSU. Number 9 Ole Miss. It's been an absolute barn burner of a schedule. There's been absolutely no rest for the Gators. Very tough schedule. So they do get a little bit of a pass from me. I think they're a little bit better than their record shows. But it is difficult to pinpoint any standout players on the Gators team, at least for me. They have settled on QB DJ Lagway to be the starter, but he's just throwing a mere 58.5 completion percentage rate with 9 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So he's still getting his legs underneath him. This is, I know FSU's not good, but it's a rivalry game, so it is still a big game. And you want your QB to be settled in by then. We'll see how he does. In the backfield, they've got Jaden Bowe, Montrell Johnson Jr., and Jacoby Jackson. They've split the carries this season, and all have done fairly well with the carries that they've gotten, but none has really taken a standout role. Maybe that's by design. But for me, I like it when a team at least has one running back that can absolutely just take the reins. You look at Ohio State, they've got probably the best duo in the nation, and still, Judkins, I think, in my opinion, has been the one to take the reins, even though both are very elite running backs. So the Gators have 3, and they still don't really have someone who I think I would rely on every down as an every down player. And then, you look at their wide receiving room. They don't have any 1,000-yard receivers yet. Elijah Badger, he leads their receiving room. He just has 4 touchdowns. Neither starting tight end, you'll hate this one, neither starting tight end has more than 175 yards receiving on the season. So it's spread out production, but no one is looking like a star player on this offense. As far as FSU goes, just really quickly, their rushing defense ranks last in the ACC. That's 106th nationally. They're giving up 180 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, the Gators, like I said, they've got that trio who all does above average on their own. They combine for 200 yards just once this season. So, like I said, they've got a little bit of production, but nothing elite. Here's how you know it's going to be a mess for FSU. Luke Kromenhoek, the true freshman, has already been named the starter for this game. He's been on the field to throw it 56 times so far this season. He has been sacked 17 times in that span. So for every 3 times this kid is throwing the ball, he's getting sacked on the 4th play. That is absolutely abysmal. I know FSU's O-line wasn't a unit that we talked about as being elite in preseason even, but that is really bad. You don't want your true freshman QB getting sacked 1 out of every 4 times he drops back to throw the ball. But yeah, that is our card for the week. That is our Thanksgiving show. Thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you to Tom for joining me yet again. His links will be down in the description along with Andy's, who's on a much needed break this week. But you can still follow his shows down below. Be sure to follow Tom and Andy's stuff down below. Listen, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the time of family for Thanksgiving. Enjoy the games because we'll be right back here in 7 days, same time, same place for week 15 to close out the regular season. See everybody next week.